What is the number one type of communication that people like receiving? Why does one food brand intentionally screw up their orders with customers to raise lifetime value significantly? And how exactly do you run a meeting that scores 10 out of 10 every single time? We're going to be answering these questions and much more in today's interview with David Wachs. David is the CEO and founder of Handwritten. He's a serial entrepreneur, and his latest venue is bringing back the lost art of letter writing through scalable, robot-based solutions that write your notes in pen. And at the time of recording, they send 180,000 handwritten notes per month. Developed as a platform, not a product, and that's important. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. And used by major meal boxes, e-commerce giants, nonprofits, and professionals, Handwritten is changing the way that brands and people connect. Prior to starting Handwritten, David founded Sell It, a leading mobile marketing agency, and Sell It was sold to Hello World in 2012. He's also a regular columnist for Inc. magazine, penning some very interesting ideas that I'd recommend checking out. This was a great interview. We dug into the nuts and bolts of communication, what it means to send personalized letters. There's a ton of takeaways here for CEOs, for leaders, for people running teams, for people who want to improve customer experience as well. I hope you enjoy. David, welcome to Subject Matter. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
So I thought we could start by looking at one of Handwritten's big value propositions, which is the power of a handwritten note. And I'm very curious to understand kind of how you personally got to this point. So my first question for you, if you're thinking back over your life, what are some of the real standout or best notes that you've ever been given? And what do they mean to you?
I mean, it goes back all the way to elementary school and middle school when I'd receive notes, from my grandparents or my parents on birthdays, holidays, other occasions, or just if I did a good job. The best note I've ever received was I had the privilege of meeting Conan O'Brien, who's a celebrity out here, and we had him speak at our university. And after speaking, he gave me a note saying, thanks for having me speak at your university. I hope I did a better job than Margaret Thatcher, which was funny because we never had Margaret Thatcher speak. But yeah, I mean, overall, as I've progressed in my career, I've seen everything go digital. Prior to this, I ran a text messaging company where I sent out 1 million text messages a day, and I'd walk around everybody's office at my company, and I'd see that while they were busy sending out text messages, what they were keeping was handwritten notes. Anytime somebody had sent them a handwritten note, they put it on display on their desk or on their bookshelf behind them. And I thought, gee, this is really interesting. We're going all digital, but everybody's craving the physical. So what could I really do to help people, foster old-fashioned handwritten communication? But it kind of runs the gamut of my upbringing and career.
So let's dig into that for a second. What do you think are some of the characteristics of handwritten communication that mean if I receive a handwritten letter from you, that I'm more likely to keep it, put it on display somewhere, versus a digital note? And just for context, I'm staring at like 5 birthday cards that I have from last month, and they're on display. One like moving in card, so it does work. Let's break down the science of it. What do you think it is about this medium that means that we want to keep them and treasure them?
Well, for one, I think it's scarcity. And happy birthday, by the way. I think it's scarcity. The average person only gets 1 or 2 pieces of mail per month that are handwritten, compared to all the junk mail and then, all the physical junk mail, and not even talking about the 140 emails they get per day and all that. So it's the relative scarcity of handwritten notes versus other forms of communication. But I think these days, it's really the gift of time from the sender. So what I mean by that is they took time out of their schedule to go and pick out a card for you, to get a stamp, but then they also took time out of their schedule to sit down completely focused and write out a card for you, which could take 3 to 5 minutes. It's precious time that they take out to make an impact with you. I really think that's kind of the big deal with handwritten notes these days is nobody has any time. We're all pushed in a million directions. We all have ADHD from all the constant interruption, whether it's your cell phone or your email, Slack, Teams, whatever it is. So for people to devote just that quick 5 minutes to you, that says a lot in today's world. Additionally, people believe that handwritten notes can't be automated. And because of that, it feels more personal. Everybody knows every email these days can be fully automated. I could set up a schedule to send you a birthday message every year, or I can use a tool like PersistIQ or Prospect.io to send you a cadence of emails one after the other that all look like they came from my Outlook account. But people think that handwritten notes cannot be automated, and because of that, it has an elevation in standing.
I'm really reminded of some of the research that I saw from the guy behind Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number is the idea that we can only have 150 meaningful relationships in our lives at any one time. And he's had some new research come out this year, which is what it takes to have someone become a close friend. And essentially, the long story short, is the number of hours that you have to spend with someone. If I have an hour Zoom call with you every month, then that's 12 hours a year. As soon as I spend a long weekend with you, then that's maybe 72, 100 hours like that. And so our rapport and our friendship can grow that much faster. What this really seems like to me is that handwritten cards are a representation of that kind of investment in someone, that I'm going to take time out of my busy day. I'm going to concentrate that attention in you. And it makes people feel very seen, heard, and valued because, as you say, people believe they can't be automated. And either way, it does require some level of investment. Even if you are using a platform to do it, you still have to decide what's going to go into the message. You have to decide what style of writing. There's a lot of kind of variables that go into this. So this does seem like in a world that's starved of attention, handwritten cards are a real embodiment of conscious attention expressed at someone you care about.
Yeah, we recently did a survey of 2,000 individuals, and we asked them how they like to be communicated. And we asked them under multiple different touch points which form of communication they prefer the most. Their actual number one form of communication in a lot of cases was not handwritten notes, it was voice phone calls.
Can I ask, why do you think that came out number one? What is it about voice calls?
I think it's the ultimate expression of focus, time, and personalization. I might be able to sit down and write 20 handwritten notes all at once, but for me to actually pick up the phone and call you, maybe that's a rarity these days where people aren't picking up the phone and calling. And if it comes from somebody genuine, where it's not just a telemarketer, I think people really appreciate having their sales rep or their customer service rep, account manager, whatever, give them an actual phone call and not blast out any form of communication at all. But then number two on that list was frequently handwritten notes, because they find them not annoying, not invasive, highly personal, highly personalized. And people really appreciate that too. And, I think one of the ongoing benefits, and we could probably do a better job of capturing this in our next survey, is, people will maybe remember that phone call, but they can't put it on display like they can put that handwritten note on display as a constant reminder of the investment in time and thoughtfulness that person did. Just to give you a quick example, we have a piano tuner here in the United States that uses our service. And after tuning your piano, which only has to occur once a year, he sends a handwritten note to all his customers, thanking them for the opportunity to tune their piano. And the next year, when he shows up back at your house to retune your piano, that handwritten note is not only saved, but it's on display on the piano often. So what that means is, not only did they read your message, they kept it and they put it on display on their most prized possession, which I think is
Mm.
very unique and interesting. I mean, I've never printed out an email and stuck it to anything in a refrigerator or anything else, on display. Or maybe I have, but it's been very limited. I've certainly never taken a screenshot of a text message and printed it out. So it's really unique in that the handwritten note itself is the gift.
What also strikes me as very unique about handwritten notes and letters is whenever we are whenever we have a gift on display, like someone, for example, my brother bought me a plant for my birthday. That's on display, and that's a symbol of his love and care for me in the gift that he's given. Every gift in the world, basically, the gift is the symbol in and of itself. But with cards, you get to actually say the meaning behind the gift. So you're giving the gift, but you're also saying this is why I care about you, which
Yeah.
makes letters quite unique, and I think is one of the reasons why there are hundreds of books out there from interesting thinkers and prominent people which chronicle the letters that they wrote over the years. I went to see an exhibition on Horatio Nelson, one of Britain's leading naval commanders, and he would send dozens of letters every day. He'd be in correspondence to his admirals, to his contacts all over the world, to close friends, and there's a huge collection of them. And so it's not just a physical representation of what someone says, but it's also a representation of them saying what we mean to them, which strikes me as quite unique about a letter.
Absolutely. We have a furniture brand here in the United States. They sell furniture online, and they have people calling up their customer service desks crying because they were so touched by receiving a handwritten note from the customer service desk. Now, I think a lot of that is in response to COVID again, people feeling isolated and alone and forgotten, which just proves the point that, we all have to take some time out to appreciate our employees and our customers and make them feel wanted, needed, and thought about. They need to know that we think about them. So, I think now more than ever, people really appreciate the personalization of that.
Do you know what? I'm reminded of after birthday parties as a kid. Some kids would write handwritten notes,
Yeah.
and some of them would have printed out "Dear X, thank you for the wonderful gift. I really enjoyed it," and then just sign at the bottom like they're like they've got a knighthood or something. It's like this takes
That's
the
very
whole
formal. Yeah. We don't,
yeah, it's
we
from
don't,
like an 8-year-old.
yeah. Yeah. I can't recall doing that, but, we have some clients like family fun centers here in the States where, they will be a service provider for sending thank you notes, but, you'll have your birthday party at this, whatever, indoor jungle gym. And they'll say, as part of the birthday, we'll send out thank yous on your request, from you. But
Ah.
what they're really
Mhm.
doing is they're capturing all the other little kids that are having birthdays and then marketing to those kids saying, hey, have your birthday at this location. So, we get it a little bit here, but it's more of a marketing tactic than anything else.
What I'd really like to understand is for the leaders that are listening to this, who are leading teams and have customers that they serve, what is the kind of impact or experience that a handwritten card might deliver to a customer? And perhaps you could illustrate this with a couple of examples from Handwritten and from the customers of the clients that you've worked with.
Yeah. So, starting off, handwritten notes have a 300% higher open rate than printed envelopes. So, if you're comparing us to any other form of direct mail, it's 3 times the open rate compared to direct mail. And then if you're comparing us to email, where nearly 100 times greater open rate, what we're seeing with our clients, we work with car dealers, and when they send a handwritten note to their customers asking them to come on in and try and check out the new car and trade up or trade in their car, if they send these notes via a printed letter, compared to a handwritten letter, they have a 23-time greater response rate from the handwritten letter than the printed letter. When you adjust this for the additional costs involved, you still end up with about a 7 times greater ROI compared to the printed note. We have another client who is a snack box provider for offices. So what they do is you can subscribe to their snack box, and then on a biweekly basis, they'll send boxes, or every 2 weeks, they'll send boxes of snacks to your office. They find that if they've screwed up and sent you the wrong box or delayed sending you the box, and they send you another box with a handwritten note apologizing, they find that the lifetime value of those customers is vastly higher than if they never screw up in the first place and don't send the win-back box. So what they're doing is, because they want all their customers to have a higher ROI, higher lifetime value, they've started intentionally screwing up with all of their customers. They send them all a win-back box, and they rise, they raise the average lifetime value of all of their customers. So it's pretty funny that they've taken that tactic. But really, the biggest use case we're seeing is just birthday and holiday. Adding 2 additional touch points where you make sure to get in front of them with a handwritten note, and there's a pretty high likelihood that handwritten note will stick around a little bit. That's a powerful proposition for businesses, whether they're B2B or B2C. So we do it in both cases. But it really runs the gamut from B2C brands, small businesses like realtors, mortgage brokers, all the way up to these larger meal boxes, luxury brands. We work with some of the largest luxury brands in the world, just helping them communicate with their customers and try to connote how valuable those customers are to them.
It does seem like to me that the multiple touch points that you're going to be getting compound in effect. So if you have one touch point that's memorable, then when you have another, it shows that there's this kind of attentiveness to, or you feel like there's this attentiveness to you, which is consistent over time, and it kind of makes you prick up and pay attention. Now,
Right.
one of the use cases we haven't touched on, which I think a lot of people listening will be curious about, is using handwritten notes for teams, for C-suite leaders to communicate to their teams.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience with doing this yourself, or is this something that you've seen it being used as? And if so, can you provide any guidance or suggestion for people listening if they want to send handwritten notes to their own staff as well?
We're doing a lot of this for companies that are hiring new employees as kind of a welcome from the CEO. So, after joining the company, the CEO will send them a welcome to the team style message. We're also doing it where the corporate office will send individual franchise offices or, regional offices birthday cards with all of the signatures of all the C-suite leaders in those greeting cards.
So let's take a step back from handwritten notes for a second and talk about your personal communication style as a CEO. What are the main channels that you come back to personally in your own communication style that you think lets you communicate efficiently with the company, but also effectively, being personal when you need to, taking time for the staff when you need to? What are the, like, very practically, the tools that you find yourself using every day look like, and can you maybe explain as well why you've chosen the tools that you do?
Well, I'd love to say it's handwritten notes, but it's frequently not. These are not every. You need the right tool for the right job. So
For sure.
Usually, we used to be a very big Slack user, sending out, messages on Slack everywhere. In fact, our robots that we use to write our handwritten notes, they actually can communicate via Slack to let us know when they're out of paper or ink or paper jam, what have you. But now we've actually migrated to Microsoft Teams, and I vastly prefer it, as does, I was actually quite nervous about the transition because, any change is hard. But For one, because we run all the Office apps, Teams is free and the full suite of video conferencing and all of that is free. And it makes it quite effortless to pop on a video conference with other people. They could even be in the same office. There's often times where my bookkeeper, who's all the way on the other side of the office, I need to chat with her. So I'll just pop on an audio conference or a video conference with her and we can share screens, what have you. But I think if it's a highly personal message, I do not send it over Teams. I'll have them come into my office. We'll discuss directly. For one, I think there's a little bit of lost in translation, where if I put it in text form, they might not get the insinuation, the innuendo, whatever it is, the inflection that I'm trying to connote at the time. And number two is you never know who's at their desk when you send a Teams notification. And if it's of private nature, you don't want to share that with anybody, and you don't want people to be able to accidentally read it. So, and then obviously all too many emails like any other organization, but internally it's mostly Microsoft Teams.
What are the important variables or areas of the business for you to, when you think about that heartbeat, for you to have a constant temperature check on? So as the CEO, what are the domains or the areas that you are most constantly coming back to make sure you're informed and you're up to date on?
So the areas I'm involved with, we have a account management channel in Teams, a billing channel. Billing is a big one, wanting to know who's paying us, what campaigns are launching, that type of thing. We also have a leads channel. We've highly automated our organization. And if you go to handwritten.com, that lead gets automatically populated in Teams. And at the very least, I'm going to count up our leads on a daily basis and try to see, how many leads we got and the quality of those leads. Those leads are all divvied up and separated to the appropriate people. But I like to at least stay on top of how many are we getting and then how many are we closing. I also, same thing with outgoing invoices to incoming payments. How many invoices are going out? That's all tracked in Teams. How many are coming in? Also tracked in Teams. We combine Teams a lot with Zapier, which is a tool for automation. So we basically use Zapier to stitch together all business processes. And oftentimes a step in that business process is a notification in Teams. We've got developers overseas that I still use Slack to communicate with. So I haven't been able to get rid of Slack entirely. I have multiple applications open on my desk at any time. And I kind of interact with all those too. And thankfully, because most of it's in Teams, I can stay on top of it.
It seems to me very metric driven. You're really trying to understand the fundamentals of the business from the numbers that are driving it.
Yeah, and then in addition to Teams, we're implementing a good part of Traction. If you're familiar with that, Traction is, well, I guess it's called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. It's by there's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman that walks through it, and part of this is his notion of the level 10 meeting. And we've implemented that. A lot of people hire implementers to assist with setting up what quote unquote level 10 meetings. We just read the book and have followed it and watched YouTube videos and all that. So once a week, we get together, the leadership team of the organization get together for an hour and a half. We run through our scorecard of metrics. And then we also go through headlines of employees and clients and all the rest. But that hour and a half on a Monday really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the week and helps us stay focused on the most important tasks in our organization on a weekly basis. So that we've recently done in the last 3-4 months, and it's been a pretty good catalyst for change within our organization.
What is different for the level 10 meeting and aligning on priorities compared to just a regular meeting with your leadership team where you're talking about KPIs and the company?
I'm no expert. I've read one book and really kind of reread 1 or 2 chapters. But
sure.
For us, the definition of a level 10 meeting is a meeting, if you're to rate a meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, these types of meetings should get 10 every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a meeting that starts on time, it ends on time. And that time in our example is an hour and a half. It has a set, constant agenda. There's an opportunity. It's a highly structured meeting, which I appreciate, where the first 25 minutes you run through the scorecard, you run through employee issues, customer issues, wins, all that stuff. You don't comment on it. You just run through it. You get all the facts down. And then you spend the remaining hour pretty much going through, finding issues, discussing those issues, and coming up with to-do lists for the next week to report back on, how to turn all those to-dos to dones. So it's really about staying 100% on task, focused. Not, there's 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for they should EO should hire me. There's 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting set up for good news, where you can kind of get everybody in a good mood and jibber jab a little bit, and but then the rest of the meeting is 100% focused, and it doesn't go off task, and there's people accountable for everything, and it's structure in organizations, especially mine, that sometimes lack structure. But this meeting is highly structured and very effective in getting things done.
Reminds me of something that Slack's COO mentioned. I can't remember her name, but there's a good YouTube video on how to run effective meetings, where she always encourages everyone to do a check-in at the start and a check-out, and that has to happen as a regular touch point, and it's the structure that allows us to innovate within it. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned that you write for Inc. magazine, because you've written about this next idea in Inc. that we're going to close with today. And the last time we spoke, you said this phrase which really stuck with me, which is that boring is what I want. That we're aiming to the idea of building a boring company as opposed to a sexy, consumer-facing company, specifically as to how you're thinking of a platform-driven API rather than a consumer-driven company. Could you talk about why you think the boring is why you want Handwritten to be a boring company, and what that practically looks like in terms of how you envisage scaling in the future?
Yeah, boring you don't think about. You think about exciting, and you have to spend time thinking about exciting to get it to work. Your plumbing in your house is boring, but it's going to work. It's going to run. You don't have to think about it. You can trust it, hopefully. I hope you can trust your plumbing. But that's what we want as a company. Is we don't want people to have to think, oh, gee, it's time to send out a handwritten note. What am I going to send? Who am I going to send it to? On what stationery? In what handwriting style? That takes up headspace that people don't have anymore. What you want to be is, I've turned on my handwritten note automation. Now I'm comfortable knowing that all my customers at certain touch points in the process will receive a handwritten note without me doing a single thing about it. I don't have to think about this. This is taken off my list, and yet my compliance goes way up. My employee satisfaction goes up. My customer satisfaction goes up. My loyalty goes up. My churn goes down without me having to do anything about it. Anytime I get a customer opportunity that a salesperson brings to me, that's a huge promotion. They're like, oh, this cereal brand wants to send out 10,000 handwritten notes to people in a contest or whatever. It's a giant eye roll on my side, because yes, it's 10,000 notes, and that's great, and all the rest, and we're happy to help, but it's not an ongoing part of the cereal brand's culture. It's not going to be repeat business. It's going to be a lot of work with a lot of revision up front, and then it's over. Versus what we're doing in the automotive space by integrating with these large automotive data providers like CDK and Dealer Vault, is we're able to become the plumbing of the automotive dealership, where they're able to set up some message templates on day one, and then day 2 through day infinity, those notes will go out at the appropriate times to the appropriate people. And they don't have to think about it. And while it might not be as much money up front, it's not 10,000 notes that go out. Over the lifetime value of that over the lifetime of that customer, it's going to be way more. And it's also going to have much lower risk for both them and for us. It's really, our goal to automate as much as possible, to be a platform, not a product, and to be where the customer wants us to be.
There seems like an interesting link here as well between this boring approach and not having to think about it and the ever expanding customer experience that brands like Amazon are able to force on us with grocery delivery. Mm-hmm. So here in the UK and in some parts of the US, you can now get groceries at a blinding speed. One of my friends in New York this week got groceries delivered in 8 minutes, it's just staggering.
Wow.
And yeah, and the key thing there is like she didn't even have to think about it, right? It was 12 o'clock when she ordered, 12:08, groceries are at the door. And we pay a premium to not have to think about things. We pay for the lack or for the extra bandwidth. So I think that's a good prompt for people listening when you're designing products and services or experience and thinking very carefully about how can we make this so the customer doesn't have to think, so that this result happens by almost on autopilot as much as possible, because the less time they have to invest into getting your product or service up and running, the more valuable it seems like you actually are to them.
Oftentimes, the online experience does a much better job of compliance than the offline. And I mean, it's obvious as to why the online is fully automated and the offline is not. But, I think there's a lot of use cases where, while it does make it easy for the customer, to your point, purchase a product, we also have to make it easy for your employee to do their part and stay in touch with their customers and prospects as well. And really good clients see automation for both online and offline, not just handwritten notes, but everything is kind of a key for that.
Ultimately, it's creating a better employee experience because it's saving them time. It's something they don't have to think about. So you're taking it off their plate. David, this has been a really interesting breakdown into the fundamentals of personalized communication and how to do it at scale. So thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation. If people want to keep up with you online and follow your ideas, where are the best places for them to go and follow your journey?
Yeah, I mean, the best place to hear about us is our website, handwritten.com. We have a resources section, which is our blog, where we post daily, and they're good articles. And then we also have Twitter at Handwritten, the at followed by HANDWRYTTEN.com. You can find me, David Wachs, David W. at Handwritten on LinkedIn. If you're looking for me, I'm the only David W. that works at Handwritten. That's really, those are kind of the best places. I don't do a lot of tweeting personally. Sometimes I'll just forward on stuff from Handwritten or Inc. magazine or whatever, but Handwritten's Twitter is really a great place to go.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and want more insights to help you get ahead personally and professionally, make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our latest content. It makes a big difference in helping our content get discovered, and so I'd really appreciate it too. If you have any thoughts on what you've just heard, I'd love to hear them. You can drop us a comment on YouTube or message me directly on Twitter. My handle is @BenBradbury_. I'll see you next time.